So today we're going to be going through all the things that we haven't been finishing and try to just spray them all.
We're gonna call it Hot Mess Monday because we have to get the shop ready to open on Tuesday. So this dresser is going DIY apothecary, and we're gonna be planking the top because it's kind of roached. I'm brushing it because we have like just that much left of the paint, so it's really not enough to fill a hopper. So I'm just gonna get a coat on here. When it dries, anywhere I see brush strokes, I'll put a second coat and then it'll be ready to distress and seal.
So I'm just mixing up some Bondo. These are the sconces we picked the other day, and they've got a couple little holes in them. This is just all-purpose Bondo that I got down at the Home Depot. You can get it all over the place. A lot of auto parts stores and things like that, hardware stores, they carry it. We were looking at a picture of the shop, and we've got a ton of color in there right now. A lot of apothecary, a lot of Hey Sailor from DIY, because last week we sprayed everything Hey Sailor. So we decided that we wanted to do white this week. So I'm just filling this up. This is a 20-ounce hopper. If you're wondering what a hopper is, this is the hopper on the spray gun. So 20-ounce hopper, 15 ounces of paint, 5 ounces of water. And then I will shake that up and we'll spray. I've got everything laid out on my tarp and ready to spray. This bread box back here with the glass in it, I'm going to go ahead and leave the glass in, spray it so I don't get paint all on the inside. Then I'll take that out and put some hardware cloth in that. And then everything else is going white. Jamie decided she wanted the inside painted white since we're going with the hardware cloth, which makes a lot of sense, so I'm gonna spray it white.
I've already sanded the drawers while Zeb was spraying, but now the base is dry. So I'm going to be using the orbital sander with 220 sandpaper to smooth out my brush strokes as well as sand on the edges. We've got a couple of fun colors, Queen Bee and Old 57, so I'm going to use my Paint Pixie French brushes. Little Pixie, Big Pixie. This is the old one. They come with a wood handle now. I've had this one for a long time. I'm going to paint these with it, let them dry, distress them, and then we'll seal it with clear wax on the end and food safe oil on the middle. I don't tape it off because I'm lazy. So I have to go nice and slow. Once I get the sides done, then I just paint the tip and let it dry, ready to distress. So I'm using Real Stain number 2. I'm putting my second coat on these cutting boards. This one was already a cutting board, had a chicken on it, sanded the chicken off. It had a heart shape right here. Zeb just kind of cut that out. And then we sanded it all down, and we're gonna Real Stain it to give it a brown gray look. The nice thing is it's water-based, it'll come off of my hands, it's food safe. And then I'm gonna take and I'm gonna Real Stain this cutting board that Zeb cut out the other day, but we never got around to finishing. This one I'll probably put a stencil on, but this one I'll just seal with a food safe butcher block oil, and it'll go in the shop like that. I was halfway finished with this one. Zeb said, stop! You gotta tell them what you're doing. So I've got a stencil on here, and I'm using my stencil brush from Paint Pixie, and this stencil is from Essential Stencil. I'll have Zeb drop the link below. If you use code Jami Ray Vintage, you can save 10%. I'm just gonna stencil this on here, let it dry, we'll distress and wax it. To stencil this, I like to use the lid sometimes because it doesn't take much paint. I dip my brush in there, and then I offload the brush so I don't have a ton of paint. Otherwise, you're gonna get bleeding underneath your stencil. And then I just pounce it up and down. Once it's done, I just pull the stencil off and let it dry.
I don't know if you guys remember these, but they got forgotten in the freezer for about a month. Someone recommended putting it in the freezer to get the wax out. It got some of the wax out, but I'm gonna finish getting it out with the heat gun. Everything's painted and ready to be distressed and sealed. I used a quart of paint to paint all of these smalls. There's a little bit of overspray, but the time it took and the coverage I got, I wouldn't be able to do that brushing all of this. I painted this in about probably, I would say, an hour all total.
So this rooster was painted in white swan. If you watch our lives, you saw us pick it live. Well, not pick it, but show it when we found it live. And then you watched us spray it live last Wednesday. And today we're distressing it. I'm taking off the paint from the eyeball here. You just get it wet and the paint comes off until it's sealed. I was gonna distress the whole thing, but I can see that's gonna be a hot mess. We're gonna leave the eyes wet distressed, so that way, well, basically I didn't even wet distress. I just took all the paint off the eyes, and we're gonna spray seal this, and then it'll go in the shop. So I'm gonna show you a little bit of how I wet distress and how I use the sander. On pieces that are like glossy, or in this case are porcelain, I'm going to be using wet distressing, and on these picture frames, because I don't want to take off the detail, I'm just going to wet distress the details on these. But on pieces that have lots of flat surfaces, like this bread box, I'm going to use my orbital sander on that. You can see when I take my damp rag and go across it, it just pulls out the color underneath on the details and gives a little bit of an aged look. Back by popular demand, I have my cherub. We've sprayed it all white, and I'm just gonna wet distress the details. If you have watched my live where we found this, people either loved it or they hated it. Zeb was a hater. I loved it. I think it's gonna be darling.
I didn't hate it, I just didn't love it.
Well, I like it. All right, so comment below. Do you like the cherub or do you not like the cherub? Team Jamie is yes, Team Zeb is no.
We were gonna plank the top on this, but I couldn't find any wood that I had that would work well without having to do a lot of processing on it. So I've stapled the top down, and then I'm just gonna fill these cracks with Bondo, and then we'll sand them smooth and paint the top. I'm installing the hardware cloth on the bread box. This wasn't a big enough piece to make me want to break out the angle grinder to cut it, so I'm just using my side cutters and gonna staple these on with the central pneumatic stapler. I've got it set at 90 psi and I'm just using a 1/2 inch 18 gauge staple. This mirror was glued in, and when things are glued in, I don't like to mess with it because a lot of times I can break the mirror or pull the silver off the back and it just doesn't ever work out well. So just gonna take some window cleaner. We like the foaming kind because it sits on there a little better if the piece is vertical, like on a hutch. Gonna let that sit for maybe 30 seconds and then I'll scrape it off with a razor blade.
So this was challenging to get us and all the things, and I think we're covering up a few things, but Zeb's gonna take pictures.
Yeah, I'll have some good close-ups of the whole lot all put together.
So it looks like a lot of white, and it actually is, but in the shop we have a lot of different colors going on right now, and we're transitioning into fall, which means I'm bringing in like the warmer tones and stuff, so the white will help give me some neutral pieces to start layering in the fall.
Well, and we had a lot of white, but the white is sold and the color pieces still sell well, but they take longer than the white. White still sells really fast in our area all year round.
Yes. Well, and if you go in our space, it's not all white.
No, there's a ton of color in there right now.
And we need a good balance. We need some rest for the eyes. The sad thing is that we need like 2 more of these paint days to even finish all the projects we have in the garage.
It's fun though, you know, we just keep getting more and more things. It's good sometimes to just take a day like this and just knock things out and clear the garage out and be like, all right, and then we have a ton of stuff to sell. And stay tuned because I'm gonna give you a breakdown of everything that we've picked, how much it cost, what we used in supplies, and how much we're planning on selling it for, so you can kind of see what our profit margin is on that estimate.
Disclaimer, we're pretty good at keeping track, but sometimes it's a little hard.
Well, as far as like estimating what we're going to make on it, we're usually pretty close, within $100 or so on something like this.
Here's the products that we use today if you'd like to create a similar look and be able to knock out this many things all at once. These paints work really great for that. They spray well, they brush well, they cover amazing, which is why we're able to get so much done. We used a quart of DIY White Swan. We used about a little more than 1/2 pint of the Apothecary for that dresser. It was already painted white underneath, so it covered really, really well. And then we used top coat. I have no idea how much.
I used 40 ounces of top coat.
So a lot of top coat.
I'll give you the breakdown of what all of that costs like per ounce, so you kind of know what we're spending.
We also used a little bit of Queen Bee, a little bit of Old 57 on the ends of those, like little tiny bit on the ends of those handles of the rolling pins, and I think that's it. Oh, we used Paint Pixie brushes, and we also used essential stencils. So to get everything except for the stencils, go to JamiRayVintage.com. To pick up the stencils, Zeb will drop a link below, and be sure to use code JamiRayVintage to save 10% on that stencil.
So if you're not following us on Facebook or Instagram, you might be missing out on a lot of these staged pictures that we're going to have in the shop, because I don't have time to take it down there right now. So make sure you're following Jami Ray Vintage on Facebook, Instagram. If you have any friends that like DIY, be sure you're sharing this video for us.
We need you to comment below. What are you doing?
I'm covering it up.
We need you to comment below whether you're, stop it, Team Zeb or Team Jami. If you like the cherub, you're Team Jami. If you don't like it, you're Team Zeb. Stop. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to Jami Ray Vintage for more
DIY.